I was ironing my best suit when I heard it. My son's voice through the cracked phone speaker, faint but unmistakable. "If Dad asks, just say he's not invited." My hands froze mid-motion. The iron hissed against the board. I stood there, staring at the perfectly creased fabric I'd planned to wear to his wedding. A wedding I'd spent 6 months preparing for, not just with clothes or a gift, but with words. Words I rewrote over and over again. A speech crafted from late nights and faded memories, meant to be read in front of the people I once called family. The thing is, I thought I was doing everything right. I built a life from nothing. I gave him a house with stairs, a college fund, and every financial safety net I never had. But somewhere in those years of quarterly reports and business trips, I missed birthdays. I missed broken bones, school plays, first dates. I was there in theory, never in practice. And now, I'm not just absent, I'm erased. A stranger to the man I raised. 6 months of writing a speech, and not a second spent earning a seat at the table. But this isn't where the story ends. No. That moment, standing in my silent kitchen, holding a useless speech and an untouched suit, was when I realized, if I ever wanted to be part of his story again, I had to start telling a different one. One not written on paper, but lived, loud, raw, and unapologetically present. I retired on a Wednesday. No farewell party, no gold watch, just a quiet handshake from my replacement and a boxed-up office I'd spent 34 years building. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a blank page and a pen. For the first time in decades, I wasn't writing strategy decks or financial forecasts. I was writing a wedding speech. My son, Alex, was getting married in 6 months, and for once, I wanted to show up. Not just be there, but be present, speak, stand before a crowd, and say something real. Something that meant more than "I'm proud." I had said "I'm proud" too many times in holiday cards, voicemails, or quick texts sent between meetings. This speech, it was supposed to fix that. I started with the easy lines. How Alex was born during a snowstorm. How he held my finger with his whole hand. But when I read them aloud, they sounded empty, rehearsed, like everything I'd said to him in the past 20 years. So I started again, and again. I rewrote that speech 10, 20 times. I had never struggled this much to say what I meant. But this wasn't a boardroom. This was my son. The silence of the house didn't help. No one to bounce ideas off, no laughter echoing down the hallway. Just me, the ticking of the wall clock, and boxes of old photos spread across the dining table. I dug into them like an archaeologist, brushing off dust, looking for some relic that would remind me who I used to be to him. I found a voicemail. Alex, at 11 years old. "Hey Dad, I got a B+ on my science test. You said if I did better, we'd go fishing. You free this weekend?" I never returned that call. I remembered the quarter I was closing, the emergency meeting with Singapore. I listened to it 3 times, trying to hear excitement in his voice instead of the slow fade of expectation. That message made it into the second draft of my speech. Not as guilt, but as context. I kept writing. Nights bled into mornings. I marked dates on my calendar not with meetings, but with memories. First bike, first heartbreak, the first time he called me sir instead of dad. I even asked Mary, my ex-wife, for help remembering what his favorite childhood book was. "Why?" she asked, skeptical. "For the speech," I said. "I want it to be real." There was a pause on the line, a pause that stretched just a second too long. "It was Where the Wild Things Are," she finally answered. "He used to make you read it, remember?" I remember. I lied. It wasn't until after that call ended that I realized something about her tone. Soft, hesitant, a little guarded. It wasn't anger. It was discomfort. And it unsettled me. 2 days later, I called again, this time to ask about the seating arrangements at the wedding. "Do you know if I'm at table 5 or 6? I asked, laughing lightly. "I want to make sure my jokes don't land flat if I'm surrounded by strangers." She didn't laugh. "Daniel," she said slowly, "I'm not sure how to say this. Maybe it's best if you talk to Alex." Talk to Alex? I thought that's what this speech was supposed to do. To bridge years of distance, of missed dinners and birthday candles blown out in my absence. But her response was like a warning sign before a cliff I hadn't seen coming. I hung up feeling colder than I had in months. The draft of the speech sat open in front of me, still unfinished. It had grown into a 12-minute monologue of heartfelt anecdotes and awkward dad humor, and I had started to believe, really believe, that it would be the thing that fixed us. But now a chill sat in my chest. I'd thought this was about showing up to speak. I hadn't considered the possibility that I might not be welcome at all. The call wasn't meant for me. I was walking past my hallway when I heard Mary's voice, muffled, coming from the old landline we still had mounted on the wall. I hadn't used it in years. She must have forgotten I could hear it from the kitchen when she left a message playing on speaker. I only caught the last line, but it was enough to stop time. "If Dad asks," Alex said, voice calm, casual, almost indifferent, "say he's not invited. Not, please don't tell him. Not, maybe it's better if he doesn't come. Just say he's not invited, like I was a stranger knocking on the wrong door." I didn't move. I didn't shout or slam anything. I didn't even breathe for a few seconds. I stared at the still air, as if expecting it to apologize. Then I laughed. A small, strange sound, like air escaping a cracked balloon. I walked back into the living room, sat down at the table and looked at my open notebook. The speech draft, still waiting to be finished. I picked up the pen. There was no question anymore. I wouldn't be reading this speech. Not at the wedding, not anywhere. But I kept writing. It wasn't for them now. It was for me. Every line became a goodbye, a confession, a last attempt to make sense of who I had been and who I had failed to be. The parts meant to make people laugh, I stripped away. The lines that once said, "I'm proud," I changed to, "I'm sorry." And I meant it. Every word bled out of me like ink that had waited years to be released. When I was done, I didn't feel relief. I felt nothing. Just a void where hope had once quietly lived. That night, I poured myself a drink I didn't even want. I sat on the porch and tried to remember the last time I had truly been present in Alex's life. I couldn't name the year. Maybe it was Little League, when he hit a grounder and looked to the stands, but I was answering emails on a BlackBerry. Or maybe it was the science fair I missed because of a corporate retreat in Arizona. I sent him a new telescope afterward, thinking it would make up for it. He never used it. I thought about his 7th birthday. Mary had made dinosaur cupcakes. I had to fly to Tokyo that morning. I told him I'd be back in time for dinner. I wasn't. Prom night, he wore a navy suit I'd bought online. I remember telling my assistant to have it tailored. I never saw him wear it. When he broke his arm falling off a skateboard at 15, Mary called. I told her I was on a panel in D.C., and I couldn't make it to the hospital. He had surgery that night. I didn't fly back. I emailed the doctor. All these moments came back not like memories, but indictments. Evidence. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped being a father and become a donor, a provider of things, not presents. A week later, I drove to Mary's house to drop off a box of old photos I thought Alex might want. She wasn't expecting me. When she opened the door, her smile faltered. "I won't stay," I said, lifting the box. "Just thought he might want these someday." She took it gently. "Thanks. I'll give them to him." Before I turned away, I couldn't help myself. "Is there someone else?" Her brows furrowed. "Someone else?" I gestured vaguely. "In his life. A male figure." She hesitated. Just long enough. "You mean Mark," she said eventually. "He's a good friend. He's been around for a while, especially when Alex was in college. Helped with car troubles, moving, stuff like that." I nodded. Of course, a presence. A shadow that filled the role I had abandoned. "Did he call him Dad?" I asked quietly. Mary flinched at the question. "No," she said, "but he called him when he needed someone." I thanked her and left. That night, I read the speech one last time, folded it neatly, slipped it into an envelope. Then I placed it inside the box where I kept all the trophies I never watched Alex win. I bought the plane ticket 3 weeks before the wedding. I told myself it was just in case, a contingency plan, like the ones I used to build in corporate budgets. But deep down, I already knew I was going. Uninvited or not, I needed to be there. I needed to say what I had written. The suit I chose wasn't new. It was the same navy one I wore to Alex's high school graduation, one of the few milestones I hadn't missed. It still fit, a little tighter around the stomach, but wearable. I had it dry cleaned, pressed, hung neatly in a garment bag beside the door. The speech had changed again, trimmed, sharpened, raw, no humor, no grand declarations, just the truth, cut to the bone. I practiced it in front of the mirror every morning like a confession. Some mornings I cried midway through. Other days I couldn't get past the first line. But I kept trying. I imagined walking into the reception as the music faded, tapping the glass, asking for 5 minutes. Faces would tense. Whispers. Mary would look away, Alex would freeze, and I would begin. With my voice, not a gift. With my presence, not a check. I would offer what I had never truly given before. Myself. The night before the flight, I barely slept. I checked the ticket 3 times, reviewed the speech again, laid out my tie. As the sun rose, I made coffee, put on the shirt, slid the speech into my jacket pocket. And then the email came. Subject line. Please read. No greeting, no pleasantries. Just the body. Dad, I know you bought a ticket. I knew you would. I'm not writing to stop you. I won't send security. I won't make a scene. If you show up, you show up. But if you love me, and I mean really love me, please don't come. This day isn't about pain. It's not about mending what's broken. It's not about you. It's about the family I'm trying to build. And I can't do that while dragging the weight of what wasn't. Let me have one clean page. Just one. There was no signature. No love, Alex. Just the words. Calm. Final. I stood in my kitchen for what felt like an hour, reading and rereading. My bag sat by the door. The cab was due in 30 minutes. The suit, pristine. The speech, folded and pressed flat against my chest. And then I took everything off, hung the suit back up, canceled the ride, sat down. The silence was deafening. For the next 3 days, I barely moved. I let the lights stay off. I didn't check my phone, didn't open the blinds. I drank straight from the bottle. Whiskey, cheap. Burned going down. Felt right. On the 4th night, I took the speech out, unfolded it carefully. My hands trembled. I read it one last time, then walked into the backyard and lit a match. It burned slowly at first, curling at the corners, then faster. Orange devouring ink, shame, effort, hope. I stood there in the dark, watching the last line vanish. If I could go back, I'd show up. Every damn time. When it was nothing but ash, I went inside, unplugged the landline, turned off my phone, and disconnected the Wi-Fi. I didn't want anyone. I didn't want to hear voices, questions, or see filtered photos from a wedding I wasn't meant to witness. I slept on the floor that night, beside the cold hearth, using my coat as a pillow. I didn't dream. Or if I did, I don't remember. 1 week later, a knock at the door broke the silence. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity moved my legs. When I opened it, no one stood there. Just a small, padded envelope on the welcome mat. There was no return address, just my name, written in Alex's handwriting. Inside, I found 2 things. The first was a photograph. Alex and his new wife, standing under a canopy of lights. She wore a soft smile, gentle and open. He looked older, calmer, his arm around her waist. Behind them, faint and blurry, I could make out Mary and a few old family friends. The second was a handwritten note on a torn piece of wedding stationery. Dad, I get why you didn't come. I get why you wanted to. I get why you thought a speech might fix something, and maybe in another life it would have. But this life, this version of us, understanding isn't forgiveness. Not yet. I read that note a dozen times. There was no punctuation, no signature, just the weight of acknowledgement without resolution. But even that was more than I expected. It was the first time Alex had written me anything in years. Not a thank you note, not a birthday card, not a forwarded email or a text from an unknown number. It wasn't warmth, but it wasn't silence. It was something. The knock came mid-afternoon, soft and uneven. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door cautiously, prepared for a delivery, maybe a neighbor with the wrong address. What I wasn't prepared for was a little girl, freckles across her nose, wild brown curls, and a nervous look in her eyes. She clutched a small notebook to her chest and tilted her head. "Are you Daniel?" I blinked. "Yes." She looked down at her shoes, then back up. "Mom said I should say hi to Grandpa. That's you, right?" I didn't answer right away. My heart stopped, then started again in an irregular rhythm. "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's me." She nodded like it was a formality, then pushed the notebook into my hands. She said I could come here, just for a little while, if that's okay. I stepped aside without thinking, holding the door open. "What's your name?" I asked as she walked past me, her small sneakers thudding softly against the hardwood floor. "Clara," she said. "I'm 8. 8. That meant Alex had a daughter for almost a decade, a whole lifetime I had never touched. We spent the afternoon eating cereal and watching reruns of old cartoons. She told me about her favorite book, how she liked to draw unicorns, and that she hated math but was really good at spelling. When she left, she gave me a sticky note with her name written in glitter pen and a tiny heart next to it. "Just in case you forget," she said. I didn't forget. She came back the next week, then the next. Soon, Saturday afternoons were reserved for Clara. We built birdhouses, painted rocks, made pancakes that looked like dinosaurs. I taught her how to ride a bike on the cracked driveway. She scraped her knee once, and I nearly cried before she did, but Alex never came. Clara would be dropped off by someone, Sometimes her mom, sometimes a sitter, but never him. She never said why, and I didn't ask. I didn't want to break the spell. At night, I'd sit on the porch and wonder if he was testing me, seeing how long I'd stick around, if I'd flake like I used to. Part of me understood. I wouldn't have trusted me either. Then one Sunday, Mary showed up. She stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching Clara through the window as she laughed at a story I was reading. "She likes you," she said. I nodded, unsure how to respond. "She's a good kid," I managed. Mary sighed. "She is. And she's got a memory like a trap." We stood in silence for a moment before she turned to me. "You know Alex still has dreams, right?" "Dreams?" She nodded. "Not the hopeful kind. The other kind. Bad ones. You not showing up. Him waiting on the porch with his baseball glove. Standing alone at the school play. Stuff like that." I looked away. "I thought he was past it," she said softly. "But every time Clara asks where you were when he was little, it opens something." I swallowed hard. "I didn't know." "No," she said. "You didn't." There wasn't anger in her voice, just fatigue, a weariness from years of filling in the gaps I left behind. "But he let her come here," I said. "He didn't stop it." "No," she said. "Because despite everything, he wants her to know where she came from, even if it's complicated." I turned to the window. Clara was laughing, holding up a drawing for me to see. It was us, stick figures on a bike, big smiles, her handwriting below, me and Grandpa. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the table, Clara's drawing in front of me, and realized something I hadn't fully grasped until then. Alex wasn't punishing me. He was protecting himself. Because even now, with all my best intentions, all my Saturday mornings and fixed training wheels, I hadn't yet earned the right to ask for more. I was still a guest in my own legacy. The invitation came in the form of a voicemail from Mary. Her tone was neutral, clipped, almost like reading a grocery list. "We're having dinner next Friday, just family. Clara would like you to come." There was a pause, then a soft click. No instructions, no time. Just a statement of fact, like a door left ajar. I arrived 10 minutes early, holding a pie I didn't bake and a bottle of wine I wasn't sure they drank. The house looked the same, though the porch lights had been replaced and the shrubs trimmed neater than I remembered. I hesitated before knocking, my reflection in the glass distorted by years. Mary opened the door with a polite nod. "Come in." Inside, the air smelled like rosemary and something warm. Clara ran to greet me, flinging her arms around my legs. "Grandpa's here," she yelled toward the kitchen. Alex emerged moments later. He looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that didn't come from lack of sleep. He didn't smile, but he didn't frown either. "Hey," he said simply. "Hey," I replied, my voice catching. Dinner was served quickly, as if we were all eager to get the mechanics over with. Roasted chicken, potatoes, something green I couldn't identify. We sat in a circle of almost connections. Clara talked the most, filling the silence with stories from school, her latest drawing, a kid in class who ate glue. No one brought up the past. No one mentioned the wedding. But at one point, Alex chuckled softly as Clara described a mishap with a baking soda volcano. "She tried to make it explode in the living room," he said, "just like I did that one year. Remember that, Mom?" Mary rolled her eyes. I remember cleaning foam off the curtains for a week. Then Alex turned to me briefly. "You were supposed to help me build it, but you had that big meeting in Chicago. I built it anyway. It exploded sideways." I froze. I'd buried that moment deep. I remembered missing it, the disappointment in his voice when I called from the airport. But now, he was smiling. "I didn't know you remembered that," I said quietly. "I remember everything," he said, then took another bite. The night ended without ceremony. Clara hugged me twice. Mary packed leftovers for me without asking. Alex walked me to the door. "Thanks for coming," he said, eyes fixed on the porch railing. "Thanks for letting me." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, slightly burnt at the edges but still intact. Handwritten. Raw. The final version of the speech I never gave. "I rewrote it," I said. "After everything. It's not a speech anymore, just something I needed to say." He took it, holding it between his fingers like something fragile. Then, without looking at it, he tore it down the middle. I didn't react. I didn't flinch. I watched him do it, each piece fluttering to the ground like brittle leaves. He looked up at me. "I don't need a speech, Dad." I nodded slowly, heart sinking again. I started to turn away, but he held up a hand and disappeared inside for a moment. When he came back, he handed me a small notebook, worn leather cover, blank pages inside. "Clara likes stories," he said. "Write her one, each week, about anything, about you, about how not to build a volcano." I stared at him, unsure if I'd heard correctly. "You're good with her," he added. "She trusts you. That means something." It took a moment for the weight of it to hit me, the torn letter on the porch, now meaningless. But this, not a demand, not a favor, but an opening. "I will," I said, voice hoarse. "Every week." He nodded once and stepped back into the house. The door didn't close right away. It lingered. That night, I opened the notebook and stared at the blank first page. My handwriting felt stiff at first, uncertain. Then it found a rhythm. "Dear Clara, once your dad built a volcano that exploded sideways. Every Saturday morning, I opened the notebook. The leather had grown softer from use, the pages more forgiving to my hand. I always wrote in pen. No cross-outs, no edits, just stories. Some true, some stretched by time, all meant for Clara. She called it the Grandpa Chronicles. The name stuck. The first few entries were light. The time I rode a bike into a pond, my fear of dogs as a kid, the summer I ate nothing but peanut butter sandwiches. Clara read them out loud, giggling, asking questions, underlining her favorite lines. But slowly, the stories deepened. I told her about my first job sweeping floors at a pharmacy, about how I skipped prom to work a night shift, about a boy named Daniel who thought success meant never being home. One week, she asked if she could bring the notebook to school for show and tell. I said yes, and she beamed like I'd handed her gold. The next week, she came back with 10 questions from her classmates. I answered them all. Then came the twist I hadn't prepared for. It was a rainy afternoon. We were coloring at the dining table side by side. Clara lifted her crayon without looking up and asked, "Why doesn't Daddy like you?" The question wasn't angry. It wasn't even sad. Just honest, pure, like water. I swallowed. I thought of all the answers I could give, all the excuses, all the reasons. Instead, I said, "Because I made a lot of wrong choices, for a long time." She blinked at me. "Like what?" "Like thinking work was more important than being there. Like missing things I should have been part of. Like not listening when people I loved asked me to show up." She colored quietly for a moment. "Are you still making wrong choices?" "Not today," I said. "Today I'm trying to learn, trying to do better." She nodded once, then resumed coloring. That night, I wrote a new story in the notebook. The title, The man who learned too late but tried anyway. Months passed. Saturdays became sacred, and slowly, I saw Alex again. Not in person, but in the details Clara shared. He had started asking about the stories, reading them, laughing at a few, saving pages. He hadn't said it out loud, but he was listening. Then one day, an envelope arrived, hand-delivered by Clara, of course. Inside was an invitation, Clara's 9th birthday, backyard celebration, family and close friends. I went. Of course I went. The yard was filled with balloons, string lights, and the kind of organized chaos only children's parties could create. Clara ran to me in a paper crown and face paint, hugging me around the waist. I spotted Mary near the drink table, talking with a neighbor. She smiled when she saw me. Alex stood by the grill, flipping burgers. He wore an apron that said Grill Sergeant. He glanced up as I approached. "Need help?" I asked. He shrugged. "You any good at not burning things?" "Not really," I said, "but I'm good at standing awkwardly nearby." He almost smiled. "Then you're hired." We didn't talk much, just grilled and served and watched Clara boss around her friends. But it was easy, natural, like years hadn't passed, or like they had, but we were ready to build on what was left. As the sun dipped low, someone tapped a glass with a spoon. A hush fell. Mary stood with a cake lit by candles leading the song. After the cheers and claps, Clara pointed at me. "Grandpa should say something." A few people chuckled. I felt my chest tighten. Before I could refuse, Alex turned to me. "Yeah," he said. "Say something." I froze. There was no notebook in my hand, no folded speech in my pocket, no prepared words, just breath, just presence. So I stepped forward. "I used to write speeches," I began, voice steady. "Used to think the right words could fix anything. They can't, not really." I looked at Alex, then at Clara. "I'm not speaking today to earn forgiveness, or to prove anything. I'm speaking because I'm here, really here, and that matters." I paused. "Clara, you are the brightest page in my book, and if I've done anything right, it's being part of your story." Silence followed. Not awkward, just full. Then Alex raised his cup. "Cheers, Dad," he said. Just like that. No fanfare, no speeches, just 3 words that cracked something open. We clinked glasses, and I knew. It wasn't a clean slate. It wasn't all fixed. But it was real. It was new. It was ours.